Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. No, Steve Lamb, I'm not shocked Mike Tyson's on drugs. Not at all. Could have told you that. I couldn't have been as specific as you were in your report there. But hey, this is a special time on the show. We stop by once a week. I'm giving away tickets here for Dead or Alive. The tickets this week, 2 tickets to see Green Day, the Saviors Tour. And that means it's not just Green Day. It's Green Day, the Smashing Pumpkins, Rancid, and the Linda Lindas. It's coming up September 11th at Globe Life Field. For the rest of us, we can get tickets at Ticketmaster.com, but I'm going to give away some tickets right now on Dead or Alive. Thank you, Mr. Jovi. Welcome to Dead or Alive. Oh, okay, good to see you too. I'm going to name 10 celebrities. You have one simple task. You have one job. Tell me if they're dead or alive. Let's start with Nancy. Nancy in Weatherford, you ready to go on Dead or Alive?
I'm ready.
All right. First one, former Dallas Morning News columnist Jean-Jacques Taylor, dead or alive?
He's dead.
No.
No, he was just... hang on. What was that a joke? Did you hear the husband in the background saying no? He was just my guest 2 segments ago. Nancy, let's see what Matt in Palestine does. I might go back to you. Because that feels really... that was almost like a joke question. Okay, hang on. Matt,
Yes.
you're going to decide the fate of the game here. Are you ready for Dead or Alive?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Rick Dees, dead or alive?
Dead.
No, Rick Dees is alive. Okay, this is going to be one of those days, isn't it? We don't want to give away the tickets. No one wants to win tickets? Brent in Weatherford, are you ready for Dead or Alive?
Yeah.
All right, real estate mogul Roger Staubach, dead or alive?
Oh, he's very alive. He can still throw a ball 70 yards.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I hear he used to play football too. Comic legend Chevy Chase, dead or alive?
No, he's still alive. He's a sorry comedian.
Yeah, he is. I hear he's a real piece of garbage as a human being. I love some of his movies, but I've heard too many bad stories. I guess you have too. Paul Rubens, we know him better as Pee Wee Herman, dead or alive?
Bless his heart, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. He's gone.
I appreciate the reverence for such an important historical figure as Pee Wee Herman.
Yes,
Texas quarterback legend Vince Young, dead or alive?
Yeah, he's alive.
Yeah, he's only 41 years old. The guy who was the Ultimate Warrior, the wrestler, his real name's James Hellwig, is the Ultimate Warrior, dead or alive?
Okay, what was his stage name?
The Ultimate Warrior.
Good grief, man. I have no idea.
It's a 50-50 shot then, just guess. I don't blame you for not knowing wrestlers. I had to look this up myself.
Yeah, I'm going to say dead.
He is dead. Died in 2014, had a heart attack. I think it's all them steroids. Herb Tarlick from WKRP. The actor's name is Frank Bonner. Is he dead or alive?
Now, who was that again?
Herb Tarlick from WKRP, the guy that wore the plaid suits and looked really ridiculous.
I guess dead.
That's a great guess because you had no idea, did you?
No, there. Yeah.
George Michael from Wham and then a great solo career. Is the singer George Michael dead or alive?
Dang, I love that guy. George Michael.
He will be your father figure. Put your tiny hand in mine.
I think he's dead.
He is dead, died in 2016. And finally, well, you really salvaged this game for us, Brent. Barry Gibb, one of the founding brothers in the Bee Gees. Is Barry Gibb dead or alive?
Now, wait a minute. There was 3 of them.
Yeah, there was like Robin and...
4 of them, yeah.
Something. I don't think Andy Gibb was in it, but there was 4 brothers.
Robin.
Yeah, so...
I think he's the one alive.
He is one... Oh, man. Thank you so much. And hang on. I almost have to apologize. You don't hang up, Brent. Nancy?
Yeah.
Was that your husband fussing at you in the background about Jean-Jacques Taylor?
Close enough.
Oh, the boyfriend, huh? That's your boyfriend?
I wouldn't call him that. He's my son.
Oh, well, then that's not close. Okay, never mind. That got gross all of a sudden. Thank you, Nancy. You should listen to your son more often. You owe him an apology on this one. All right, Brent, you are a big winner on Dead or Alive. So Brent wins 2 tickets to see Green Day, the Saviors Tour. Come to Globe Life Field September 11th. Special guest Smashing Pumpkins, Rancid, the Linda Lindas. For the rest of us, we have to go get our tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. Coming up next, some financial news. Ford has a big recall, a bunch of other things affecting your money coming up. I'll let you know about it next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Dan Bongino. No, it's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. So in economic news, I really wish the world would spend more time on economic news. I get why they don't. I get why other media outlets don't. It's not really that good for ratings, number one. You might care about it, but there's not enough people who are as heady and deep thinkers as the WBAP audience. And so what gets more clicks, what gets more stories? So-and-so's dating so-and-so. Kim Kardashian's wearing a shirt that's kind of see-through, or you can see someone's butt. A lot of butts popping up on my timeline. But this is the stuff that affects you all day, every day. This is the kind of discussions you need to be having when you're formulating who you're going to vote for, what platform you're going to support, what policies you would like to see your leaders pursue. We don't get a whole lot of that. We get a whole lot of some people's weird, some people are joyous, some people hate women, some people are, communist is almost a legit economic complaint. But look, let me give you a couple examples. Number one, Volkswagen is thinking about leaving Germany. They're thinking about shutting down their plants. Now, this is an interesting story for a few reasons. Number one, Volkswagen's 87 years old. What was happening 87 years ago in Germany? Oh, yeah, that's right, Hitler. This is Hitler's car company, not that he's like the auto engineer that designed the body style or the engine or drivetrain or any of that, but it's kind of feels gross when you put it like that. Like, well, would you even mind if it went away? But this is how German this car company is. This started out not as a private company, but as a government entity. This was of the people of Germany, and then here it is, not even a decade later. It's still one of the biggest car companies in the world. I think it's like number 3 or something, but it's not even going to be building its cars in Germany anymore. That's interesting. The question is why? All of the reasons why manufacturing leaves the home country and goes to a foreign country are not bad. One of the reasons why so much of our stuff that was made here is now made overseas and then shipped here, whether it's your furniture or your blue jeans or the little plastic toys that your kids get in the Happy Meal, it's because it's cheaper to make them overseas. And the number one reason is the cost of labor. So the reason why so much of our manufacturing base goes overseas, or any country's manufacturing base goes overseas, is because we're so affluent, because we have been so damn successful. You can't get Americans that will snap together an iPhone for 16 hours a day for $4 a day, or whatever the communists can force out of their poor little prisoner citizens. But Germany is one of the countries that's the worst. At best, I should say. Depends on how you look at it. If you're trying to hire people there, they're going to be the most expensive. They don't have a big underclass like we have. That's one of the things the big business people, the Chamber of Commerce, the neocon part of the Republicans, they like about immigration. If you wonder why all these other Republicans are so soft on immigration, well, if you're a company that has to employ thousands of people to turn out a product, you want the cheapest labor force here. If you can import people, the cost of your labor goes down or doesn't go up as fast as it otherwise would. There's downward pressure on your wages. Then if you're a guy that owns a meat packing plant, you like illegal immigration. If you're a guy that owns an assembly line, you like illegal immigration. If you're a guy that's like a housing contractor and you need a bunch of guys to frame a whole subdivision where the houses, illegal immigrants will do it cheaper than me and Garrett would. So Germany has the worst of that situation. They have such a strong cultural success rate that so many of their people are so skilled and so expensive, and wages are so high, and there's not an underclass of people that their manufacturing goes overseas quickly. It's amazing Volkswagen has stuck around that long. So first, I push back at the idea that Volkswagen having to go to another country is necessarily all bad. But another way you can look at this is, well, is there something we can do to minimize this? I know we're not going to get rid of it. I know manufacturing is going to go overseas. There's no system in which you could have Americans sew your jeans together as cheaply as they could in an Indonesian sweatshop. They don't even need air conditioning and they live in a jungle. But how do you minimize this? Well, there's a couple of problems that are spelt out in this Volkswagen situation, and I love reading sometimes on these situations the platforms that I disagree with. What would CNN say is the reason Volkswagen is having to move shipping overseas? Here's what CNN says. It's because they're not keeping up with the electric car demands. That's what it is. They're just not green enough. They don't follow our political ideology enough. Sounds silly, right? There actually may be a kernel of truth in that, but it's not for the reason CNN says. One of Germany's biggest market for cars is China, believe it or not. And China is cranking out electric cars that nobody wants. They're so tiny and pitiful and ineffective. They're not even sold here. They wouldn't even be street legal here. But China can force them on their own people. And for the small upper class and somewhat of a middle class that they're building in China, the people that can actually afford to buy cars, they're being incentivized and subsidized to buy these cars, these electric cars that China wants them to have. Hey, we want you to buy from us, not from this German company. We want you to spend your yuan here, Y-U-A-N, their currency. We want you to spend that here on ours. And tell you what, we'll give you a deal. We'll make it cheaper than the Volkswagen. Okay, but I like the Volkswagen better. It has more features. Okay, well, we'll subsidize this one. We'll put some features on it. Or tell you what, we can basically force you. We can make your life so miserable. Social credit score, whatever they got to do. They're forcing people to buy these electric cars. So CNN looks at that and they don't say, oh man, China is forcing these poor bastards to buy electric cars when they really want Volkswagen. That's cutting into Volkswagen's market share. There's a kernel of truth in that. But the truth isn't, oh, people are falling all over themselves to get into electric cars and Volkswagens just can't keep up and now they're paying the price. No, people don't really want electric cars so much so that China has to force them on their people. And there's a couple of other things that CNN, it's almost like they accidentally point some of this out. They're complaining about how looks like Volkswagen's trying to get out of the collective bargaining agreement they have with their auto workers union. No, it looks like they can't afford their collective bargaining agreement. It looks like the union isn't sticking up for the workers. It looks like the union is putting the workers out of business faster than they otherwise would have. It's the same story, just a little bit different twists on the same kernels of truth. Get you very different storylines to come out of it. Paul in McKinney, you're on WBAP. What do you think?
James, how are you? Hey, my wife's family is all German, and they come and see us. And what their deal is, like it's illegal for us to hire illegal aliens here, Germany enforces that. So they have all kinds of Muslim country people that live there, and they do not let them work. So you can't, if you are there, you get your socialist medical paid for, but you cannot work. So they build these people cities or housing, and they don't allow them to work. So that's why there is not a cheap labor situation there.
Yeah. If you read this, thank you very much for that insight. I appreciate you filling out the story a little bit, Paul and McKinney. Yeah, but if you read the CNN article, it's like, because Volkswagen's just being so recalcitrant in their rejection of electric cars that it's killing them. Stop it. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Every walker who joins the American Heart Association's Heart Walk, every dollar donated means more people trained in life-saving CPR, more research, more life-saving moments for everyone. So walk to save lives. You register at DallasHeartWalk.org or TarrantCountyHeartWalk.org. Coming up next, Debbie Schlussel, more on Kamala's preparation for the first debate coming up next week. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. In this segment, I'm going to be combining two guys who are smarter than me. First one, Douglas Murray. Next one's going to be Thomas Sowell. Ooh, someone just got excited. Thomas Sowell, I love him. Hang on a second. Let me do Douglas Murray first. Because he's a guy who's in Britain who is making the case about, hey, all this immigration we have here, it is changing our country and not for the better. Some immigration can change your country for the better. Some immigration can change your country for the worse. If you bring a bunch of good people in your country, if you have control over your immigration, if you get to selectively choose people who have some sort of accomplishment, they've accumulated some wealth or they've accumulated some sort of education or some skills, these are the people you want to bring in. You want to bring in doctors and engineers and whatnot. But there's a group of people out there, if you bring them into your country, will make your country worse. Not all immigration is good. Not all immigration is bad. Not all illegal immigration is good. Not all illegal immigration is bad. And Douglas Murray pulls no punches, and he almost enjoys. He's a very disagreeable person, not in the fact that he's mean, but he likes to correct people when they're wrong. I have that same problem. It's great for a talk show host. I would be terrible at hosting a dinner party. I think Douglas Murray would too. But he makes a good point with some of his comparisons and metaphors and examples. And this is one. If you wouldn't demoralize a minority, why would you demoralize a majority?
It would be madness if people from the Indian subcontinent made up 3% of your population, it would be madness to try to demoralize that population or to try to find ways to just say that they were nothing and never had been anything, and it was sort of best if they just tried to sidle through their lives without harming anyone. Why would you do that to 3% of the population? Among other things, it's rude, it's cruel, it's unusual, and that 3% of the population is a significant amount of the population. You don't want to demoralize 3% of the population. Okay, why would you do that to a majority? Who is so insane that they want to do this to majority populations? And the answer seems to be, well, we're finding out. We are finding out.
I've tried to say similar things. I just didn't do it that well. But isn't that a fantastic point? Why are you running around trying to demoralize a majority of your population? And that's a rhetorical question. You know why they're doing it. It's political expediency. You don't want the people standing up for their heritage and their history and their constitution and their rights and the things that make America America. My God, they might vote for Republicans. So I take that, and I want to combine it with an interview from Thomas Sowell not that long ago. Thomas Sowell was talking about when he grew up in Harlem, how he used to not hear gunshots. And I thought, oh, you know what? That's interesting, because one of the points that we like to make here on Team Red is, we often gripe about the moral decay of society overall. And that's a great point. A lot of people try and make a direct connection between, well, it's socioeconomic factors. It's because they're in poverty. It's because they're oppressed. It's because anything and everything other is an excuse other than their policies, right? But when Thomas Sowell grew up in Harlem, they were more oppressed than they are now. Segregation was still a thing. Surveys about racial attitudes, about intermarrying between races, any metric was worse. The level of poverty was much worse. But even with all those socioeconomic factors being worse than they are today, he didn't grow up hearing gunshots. Now, why is that? How is that? If it's all socioeconomic, how is this true?
When I grew up in Harlem in the 40s and 50s, I never heard a gunshot. Now, I'm sure someone fired a gun somewhere in Harlem, but it was not such a pervasive thing that you had to hear it. I have relatives in Washington. I asked them the same question. People in my generation.
Growing up in Washington, D.C.
Yes, and low-income black neighborhoods. Did you ever hear a gunshot when you were growing up? And the answer was no. I have relatives in North Carolina. I asked the same question. No.
So that's interesting. Well, what else was going on? Let's talk about homicide rates then. Thomas Sowell again.
The homicide rate in the years that I was growing up, and I was really quite lucky as I went through the research, I discovered being in the right place at the right time. The homicide victimization rate among black males in the decade of the 1940s declined by 18%. From 1950 to 1960, it declined another 22%. And then in the 1960s, when all these wonderful new ideas in the criminal justice system came in, all of that reversed, and it shot up 89% in one decade, wiping out all the progress of the two preceding decades.
All right, so let's not just slap down the fact that the reason why there's so much chaos in some communities, more so than others, is totally socioeconomic. I mean, he totally did that there. But let's give the other side. Well, if it's not that they're poor because they were poorer then, it's not that they're in poverty because they were in higher poverty rates back then, it's not that they're oppressed or white people aren't treating them fairly. They were treated more unfairly back then in the 40s and 50s. Then what might it be? Because you and I don't think it's socioeconomic. You and I think it's cultural. You and I think it's not a shortage of money. It's a shortage of what? Dads.
Children raised without two parents present That was about 22% in 1960. One generation later, it was 67%, and it's gone up a little since then as well. And now the rate among whites is higher than it was among blacks in 1960.
Right.
So if you look at what actually happens in the wake of these wonderful sounding policies, you see disaster after disaster.
So when you see violence in the inner cities or in other communities, especially minority communities, and you're looking for a why, it's not just so we can point fingers and be like, this is why you're messing up. It's so we can prevent this in the future, or at least minimize this in the future. And do we have that discussion ever? When there was a block party that someone was spraying bullets into and 11 people got shot, what was that, 2-3 months ago? Did anyone ever look into any cultural issues? Anyone say, hey, was that person raised in a single parent household? Was that person, are they a regular churchgoer? Were they at church on Sunday? Do we ever have that conversation? The guy that shot the cops last week, he murdered one of our neighbors last week. Anyone ask those questions? Anyone ask, where's his dad? What's that situation like? Was he in church? Because he was a religious guy, but it wasn't Christian. Anyone ask questions about that? No, just blame other people, blame socioeconomic factors. All we need is another program. Well, maybe if they just had free lunch in schools, or maybe if they had after-school program, maybe if they had 31 library locations, a life would be saved. No, you're barking up the wrong tree. It's not socioeconomic. It's cultural, and it's not going to get better until you start addressing some of those issues as well. All right, it's Labor Day. We're going to talk about that next, coming up with Scott Baradell. Polls show that 70% of Americans are in favor of labor unions. What's going on with that? We'll talk about it in 6 minutes on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Happy Labor Day. You know, this was supposed to be a union holiday. Are you in a union? Were you ever in a union? Because I've never been in one, so all my information is secondhand, third hand. I've heard a lot of shady stories, but maybe I've just heard the shady stories. Maybe there's such thing as a great union. Do you have a good union story? Do you have a union horror story? Because, the closest I get, my dad was in a union growing up. He was a postal worker. So I got to kind of see what that was about and hear him sort of talk about it. But I didn't ask good questions because I was just a kid. But unions are more popular than ever. By the way, if you have a union horror story or good story or opinion, either way, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Scott Baradell's coming back on The James Show. A new poll shows that 70% of Americans are in favor of labor unions. I didn't know they were this popular, Scott.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, of course, the big difference is in the 1960s, that's the last time unions were this popular, according to a Gallup poll they do every year. About 70% of Americans are pro-union, according to this poll. Of course, in the 60s, 30% of American workers were in unions. Today, it's less than 10%, so a lot has changed.
Oh, so now most of these people, they're not in a union. They probably aren't even union adjacent. They just like the idea of how a union sounds?
Yeah, because a lot of things have changed. One of the biggest changes has been there's been a party realignment. Currently, both parties, you could argue, are pro-union. I mean, the Democrats have introduced legislation to make it easier to organize unions. The Republicans, meanwhile, have said things like, we're going to bring back manufacturing jobs, and we're going to keep, undocumented people from crossing and taking your jobs. And those are all things that, in different ways, appeal to labor.
Historically speaking, haven't the Democrats been more pro-union than the Republicans?
Historically, yes, but that kind of changed in the big moment in terms of differentiating the two parties was in the early 1980s when Ronald Reagan, when the air traffic controllers declared a strike, he just fired them all because he said it was a national security issue, and he just kind of replaced all workers. That was a big moment in terms of the decline of union power. And then in the 90s, under Clinton, you had NAFTA. And so that led to this globalization of jobs to where the kind of wages that unions had been negotiating were simply not competitive. Union shops would just go out of business if they're trying to compete with workers in Mexico or other parts of the world.
Well, that was always the concern. Like, hey, you can keep asking for more and more concessions, but eventually you're just going to cost yourself your job. Has anyone learned from that? And is there a whole lot of manufacturing base that's not unionized?
Well, I think for the most part, globally, that's certainly the case, and more of American manufacturing has moved to, say, the southern U.S. and other places where unions are less prominent. But we haven't found a solution to the loss of manufacturing jobs. I mean, Donald Trump has introduced the idea of having trade tariffs and other things that could protect higher wages here, but none of that has really come to fruition. And that's why you've seen things like Starbucks workers and Amazon workers trying to unionize. And I think seeing that in the news and the struggles a lot of people have in terms of their wages just not going up despite prices going up has led to a lot of frustration and the idea that unions could maybe be something that makes things better.
I generally am with the 30% of the country that's more skeptical, more negative on unions than I'm positive. I realize that somewhere some unions done some good things, but generally speaking, there's a reason why all these small business owners, medium-sized business owners, and big business owners, none of them like unions.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you go back to when this all started in the U.S. in the late 1800s. You had big businesses, railroads and oil companies. They would run roughshod over workers. The workers that protested their wages would actually they'd bring in what they called Pinkerton men, these thugs that would just actually kill workers in some cases. It was very ugly. And so there were important reasons why the labor union movement emerged to give labor some power to counter the power of these big companies that were emerging with the first industrialization in the U.S. But over time, you've seen that's led to abuse of power on the union side, and it's led increasingly to companies just not being able to be very competitive when they're union shops.
All right, Scott Baradell, how do they find your work outside of WBAP?
IdeaGrove.com. That's IdeaGrove's the name of my agency, and you can find me there.
What does Idea Grove do?
We are a PR and marketing firm. We mostly work with B2B companies. We actually work with a lot of manufacturing companies.
All right, there he is. Scott Baradell, thanks for being on the James Show again.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, there's a couple of big recalls. One for your food, one for your truck. I'll tell you what you need to know coming up in 5 minutes on the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, happy Labor Day. It's the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. If you got any Labor Day horror stories, union stories, period, things I would think was funny, you got one segment to get it in, you better call right now, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Ford has a big recall they just announced 2 days ago, over 90,000 vehicles, and it's apparently a pretty big deal that if some intake valve breaks, it could be a big issue if that happens while you're on the road. So it's just from the last couple years, 2021, 2022 models, Broncos, F-150, Edge, Explorer, Lincoln Nautilus, Lincoln Aviator in the 2.7 or 3.0 liter engine. Luckily, I haven't been financially successful in life, so my car's only a 2016, so I don't have to worry about such issues. Dodged a bullet there. But these little recalls, I want you to remember these, because we're going to have another James Show in the future where I'm going to say we need to deregulate some sort of sector of the economy. And someone's going to say, or you may even think and not call in and say, or someone's going to send me a Facebook message and be like, well, what are we going to let them do? Just make dangerous cars that could just break and kill us, or just give us food that makes us sick? What would we do without the regulators? Oh, glad you brought that up. Did you see the Boar's Head recall where they recalled a whole bunch of like sausage and other meat products? It's a listeria outbreak. It turns out it sounds nasty. It's like a listeria Six Flags in some of their plants. And the point is that we have both of these recalls, both in food and in mechanical products that are regulated to the gills. You know how much time, effort, resources both of these companies have to put into regulation? And what happened? Still happened. Still had food that made you sick. Still had mechanical issues coming off of some, produced assembly line product. We live in a human experiment where humans have their hands in every point along the way. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be failures. But make no mistake about it. Ford and Boar's Head have a built-in incentive to not kill their customers. Free market capitalism doesn't let companies kill their customers. Having these things deregulated won't open the door so they can kill their customers. What you're looking for is accountability. What you're looking for is safety. But you can still get that in the free market because like the FDA. The FDA let all this stuff go through. Are they going to get fined? Is there going to be any investigation to them? How did you let all this listeria on the market? And if they come back and they say, well, we can't test everything that comes out of every factory. And well, okay, so you can't come up with a reasonable way to test meat so you're sure that it's safe when it goes to the store. No? Okay, then what's the point of you then? You just show up after an outbreak's already happened and be like, look at these guys acting bad. They're going to have to pay us a ton of money. Because now you set up a perverse incentive structure to where the FDA almost wants you to get sick because they can what? Fine all these companies millions, if not billions of dollars. That's good for business if you're in the FDA. If that's where you're funded, who gets to keep that money? Do you get a cut of that money? And poor Boar's Head or Ford, they still have to bear the cost. Boar's Head has to kill millions of dollars worth of revenue by throwing out possibly tainted meat. Ford has to at least offer to fix 90,000 cars. This is going to be a money-losing endeavor. Now, when you put that in there, what does that mean? That means the profit motive also gives these companies a built-in incentive to not kill their customers, not harm their customers, don't make them sick, don't make their car blow up when it's just riding down the road. Even if you look at just the profit motive, they have a built-in incentive. What's the FDA add to that? What, it makes it even more illegaler? I think of the BP oil spill. Happened like 13 years ago. Hey, how's the Gulf doing? Just fine. Just fine. But when people say, well, if you deregulate the oil industry, then oil companies will be able to just poke holes in the ocean floor and let it spill out. And really? Was that profitable for BP? Did they make a profit on that? Don't they have a built-in incentive? Didn't they lose billions and billions of dollars cleaning that mess up? Yeah, they did. They have a built-in incentive to not do it. And so we're going to have example after example after example, but it's not going to happen at the perfect time or the perfect day when I'm having the future show where this comes up. And I'm telling some guy that we don't need all of these regulations. We don't need nanny state government micromanaging over all of us. It's just a clear, naked power grab by the politicians that gives them a sphere of influence that they can turn around and sell off to a lobbyist. How much money does the FDA spend on lobbying every year? How much money does the FDA get to control by telling a company, yes, you can release this drug this year, or you have to spend another $300 million on another set of stage 4 clinical trials or whatever they were saying about the MDMA ruling a couple weeks ago. So that for the inspectors at the FDA that this got through, they going to be sued? They going to be charged with anything? No. Just want you to remember that because this will come up again. These issues will always continue to come up. And I'm not saying deregulation is a panacea. I'm not saying that if you get rid of it, your food will be safer. It'll probably be about the same. It might be marginally safer. It might be marginally less safe. It'll be about the same. There will still be mistakes. I'm not promising utopia. You know what you should do? If you buy sausage from Boar's Head or any other company, here's an idea. Cook it all the way. That's all you got to do. If you're worried about your Ford truck or your Lincoln Aviator, whatever, popping a valve when you're driving down the road, go get it fixed. Ford would probably have to do that anyway. You know, there's still class action lawsuits. There's still lawyers out there who will bring a company to heel if they misbehave and hurt somebody. You don't need an additional agency on top of that system to double down on it. Doesn't help. Something else I'm watching, and I'll probably bring you more information on this tomorrow, on tomorrow's show. Our Attorney General Ken Paxton, he's catching a lot of heat for his work here about illegal voting. I pulled a little bit of a clip of him with Glenn Beck just to set the table for tomorrow's show. But you got to hear about this because you're going to be hearing about it in the news, and it's not going to be the straight story.
That's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to communicate to as many people as I can. I hope other states will follow that there's a price to pay. It's illegal to vote illegally. I mean, there are a lot of people, they were brought in on day one. Joe Biden announced that he wasn't going to deport people. Why would he announce that on day one? Why is that the most important thing that he has to announce on his first day of his administration is because this was the plan. Tell the cartels to get people here as fast as possible, as many as possible. We're not going to make them hide anymore. They don't have to run from Border Patrol. They get to come to Border Patrol, be placed in the right states, moved around, taken care of. So what? What do they get? Why was this such an important initiative from the Biden administration? Because they wanted their vote. They want to fix the election so that we have a one-party country that we can't fix. So the message from me is, you know what? You may think you're going to get away with this, but we can still prosecute you for illegal voting. And if you participate in a scheme to encourage people to illegal vote, you can go to jail in Texas for a long time. All
right. We will continue this topic tomorrow. I've been doing a little bit of digging because I didn't like what I was reading over the weekend. Whenever I hear a whole bunch of people pull up the link to this story, paste it, and be like, can you believe the evil Republicans in Texas are arresting their political opponents and charging them with paperwork crimes? It's like, oh, that's bad now? Because that's what we've been watching you do for the last year and a half with Trump and Steve Bannon and Paul Manafort and all kinds of other guys. Oh, that's bad again. That's interesting. He must really be onto something if you're complaining that much. So look for that on tomorrow's show. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Labor Day. We'll come back and we'll have a completely normal show tomorrow. Stick around. Mark Levin's coming up next. And if you need more of The James Show, find The James Show podcast, WBAP.com and the WBAP app. I'm James Parker. This has been The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.